All right, guys, welcome to the final episode of season 3 of the podcast. I'm a man of my word. I said what I said. So, yes, our final episode, as I said, is going to be Indiana Jones. The weekend that we're recording this is the same. We all got the unfortunate news about George Foreman. Just a quick RIP to Mr. Foreman. My condolences to his family. I'll be praying for them. I knew he was a man of God. I believe that's what I've heard. And wherever he is, man, he fought a good fight. Now he can be with the Father. So, RIP, Mr. Foreman. You were a good person. All right.
Amen.
Yeah, amen. So, all right. Like I said, Indiana Jones, if y'all could tell from his background, I think from one of the greatest games ever made. Indiana Jones is definitely, it's a very famous series done by George Lucas and Steven Spielberg with their team up. It is, I think, the third collaboration with Harrison Ford and George Lucas. And I know some people are thinking, wait, there's another collaboration. Yes, Harrison Ford and George Lucas collaborated before Star Wars. It was a film called American Graffiti. Harrison Ford's role in that film isn't really like a huge role. It's very minor, but because it was like the start of his career. I think the start of both of their careers, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know too much about American Graffiti. I just know it's just a movie before Star Wars that George Lucas directed and it had Harrison Ford. But yeah, Indiana Jones obviously is Harrison Ford's one of his greatest film roles along Han Solo. I guess number 3 would be Deckard from Blade Runner, even though, Blade Runner isn't really that famous of a movie from Harrison Ford, either that one or 2049. And he never came back for the in-betweens of those, like, films, right? Like the short films.
No. The short films were just with just interconnecting more Jared Leto and Batista's roles.
Indiana Jones, how we're just going to talk this. We're not really going to talk about the plots because, come on, you guys should have seen these movies by now. Like, even if you say, like, I've never seen one Indiana Jones movie, well, I guess do me a favor and as well as yourself a favor and stop listening to this and go watch. I recommend at least just the first 3, but if you want to watch the final 2, that's fine too. Even though I don't hate the last 2, I do have a lot of questions about the 5th one that came out not too long ago. But 2 years in the making, we're finally getting to do this. How I was introduced to Indiana Jones was I was one of those folks that got to go to Disney World at a really young age. Yes, I'm that kid. That Disney had Indiana Jones attraction, and it was just like a live performance, just like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and very clean, very clean. Like if you watch our first 2 films, you guys are gonna think like, "Wow, this was rated PG." Well, I mean, the PG-13 rating system hadn't been invented until 1984 or 5, I believe, was Red Dawn as the first.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
like you're mentioning, I mean, it's historical for the fact that it's this franchise that introduced PG-13. It's
really,
the first film to be rated PG-13 because Spielberg, at least the director of the second film, was like he couldn't justify a PG rating for the torture of like kids in
yeah,
enslavement camps underneath. And if you know the second film, you know the second film. I'm not
yeah.
gonna go much into that, but that's the point. That's the first film that I guess we know of to be rated PG-13.
Yeah. So rather than talk about the films as a plot whole, I just want to talk about like the impact more, as well as like, just some of the great characters of these entire series. We'll just talk about the first 3 for this second segment. And then if I want to do another 2, we'll definitely do one fourth film and then one for the 5th film. But I feel like I'd rather just talk about the first 3 for this half. And then the last half, we'll just talk about the second 2 films or the last 2 films. I'm sorry. But like I said, the first 3 were really supposed to be a trilogy. The first film, when you ever watch it, it's not even called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, but Disney had already retconned the title. It's just called Raiders of the Lost Ark because Indiana Jones already is a new character at this moment in time. Again, Harrison Ford, it's a new character for Harrison Ford, plays Indiana Jones, an archaeologist who loves to discover things. He just like finds things. It's like either this should be a museum or this will give me gold. It's one of those 2. And when he's not excavating, I would say he is a teacher part-time, which I don't even know how that would work in real time, just because you're either on one half of the globe on one day, and then for some reason you got to go back and teach class the next day. Like, again, it's fiction, so really you always have to have the suspension of disbelief. But the first film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, again, it's not called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just called Raiders of the Lost Ark. They don't add the Indiana Jones part in the Temple of Doom. And the first film was definitely about finding the Ark of the Covenant. And if people don't know what is the Ark of the Covenant, so they kind of explain in the movie, but if you grew up with the Bible and stuff like that, you know that like there were 2 sets of the 10 Commandments. Remember, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, was it?
Hmm.
Yeah, when he came down from
Yep.
Mount Sinai with the first set of the Ten Commandments, the people of Israel were already like worshiping their pagan god. They got tired of waiting for Moses. They wanted to do something that the Egyptians had done. And seeing all of this, what am I doing with my arm, by the way? I'm pretending like I'm holding the commandments like Moses. But anyway, like if you've ever seen that infamous scene from the Ten Commandments, and if you haven't seen the Ten Commandments, also do yourself a favor and watch that too. It's long. I'm gonna let y'all know that. Actually, it comes out on the Easter time. So every Good Friday, ABC, I don't know if they'll do it this year, but ABC will do the Ten Commandments. But anyway, I always think of this scene from the Ten Commandments when he sees it happening, and what he does, and pretty much what Moses says in the Bible is those who do not live by the law will die by the law. And he smashes the Ten Commandments. And then he has to go back up, get the next set of Ten Commandments. And they're the same rules. It's not like they change or anything. And then the Israelites are like actually waiting patiently. So some scholars believe that the Israelites gathered the shadows of the first set of Ten Commandments and put them in the Ark of the Covenant. And then after, I believe, the destruction of Babylon, the Ark of the Covenant was never recovered. So that's like why it became like this big deal to find the Ark of the Covenant, because this is what it holds, is the power of God. And now I'm just thinking of that scene from the Prince of Egypt, behold the power of God.
Oh, power of God.
Yeah. And I guess you could say this is kind of like Steven Spielberg's, or like home, or I guess you could say, because for those that don't know, Steven Spielberg is Jewish. So it's very much like, obviously, like his home was like with Schindler's List and the recent The Fabelmans. But the first film and the third film, I believe, are more focused on the Judeo-Christian religion, which I guess why I connect with them a lot more. And I'm not saying I don't dispose the other three films. It's just because of like how I grew up and where Susan and I went to school, I kind of focus on this film, which is Raiders of the Lost Ark, and The Last Crusade a lot more. But also because The Last Crusade has, Sean Connery, and Sean Connery and Steven
Come on, that's the James Bond.
Yes. Sean Connery, Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, all under one film. That's like, you don't get that amount of legends. And like I said, I don't like to pretend the second film in that trilogy doesn't exist. I actually do like the second film because it gives me like a horror aspect. And I know it has some kind of controversy because of it takes place in India, and Indians have or there were certain Indian groups that hated the film because it's either the Indians are either like the villain or the people in distress, and then there's the whole white savior thing. The only person who called that out was I forgot the actor's name, but he played the villain in the Temple of Doom. And he said, "You guys are just being weird. It's just a movie. Just grow up." But, and obviously the dinner scene where they're eating like snakes and bugs and all that. But you also got to understand, not many people knew that part of the world, like of what they do, but it's also kind of a satire thing. But back to the Raiders. I mean, again, it's what started it all. And I guess Raiders can give you much of a spiritual lesson, I guess you can say. So, okay, first of all, the ending of the movie where all the villains die, guys, we are saying the spoilers again. If you haven't seen these movies, you're wasting your life. Or as soon as worth the taste, so we can make sure they're watching this movie. But the ending of this movie, let's put it this way: the effects of how these people die puts Marvel to shame on how their villains die. Because damn, what is it? The face melting scene where they're just seeing the power of God itself. That's just like that still holds up. Like, it still holds up. Yes, some effects are a bit dated, but guys got to remember, this was the early 80s. I remember Susan and I, we actually saw this in theaters.
We hadn't even reached the pinnacle yet.
Yeah. I remember when we saw this in theaters a long time ago.
Was this the IMAX screening? Yeah,
it was the IMAX screening, yeah. Dang, I forgot what I was going to say, but I think it's the only Indiana Jones film I actually ever saw in theaters, which is weird, because I think it was because IMAX was re-releasing Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we saw it with Kevin, and seeing it in IMAX is actually really cool. It's a really great experience. I love it when theaters like to re-release movies, because I mean, it's interesting how you always felt like you're never gonna watch some of the classics, and then some theaters are like, nah, we're re-releasing them, and then you're like, oh great, I get to get some of that experience. And I know some theaters like to update the sound quality and the film quality. You said that when Animal Draft House, I believe, not making fun of Animal Draft House, but I'm saying you said that happened when you went to go watch, what was it, the Terminator re-release or something like that?
Yeah, it's not the theaters that are usually updating the stuff. I mean, yeah, you have Dolby Stereo and Dolby Atmos that is mostly what the new movies are synced to, but like it's really the studio, or at least like if
Mm,
the director or editor were decide to come back and revamp the sound mixing for the film. So I mean, when my brother and I went to go see Terminator again, that was the change. I mean, everything was really just upgraded to 4K, so
mm,
you could see more of the picture. I guess for movies back then, it sometimes kind of ruins the magic. Some films, again, all based on whoever mixes it, they like to remove all that grain. I mean, it's film grain. Film
yeah.
grain is living proof that it was on shot on film. And then when you have future releases now on 4K that are actually removing said grain, it kind of messes with new generations who are watching these films for the first time. They're not really seeing, like, they think, oh, this looks like this came out maybe 20 years ago when this came out like twice that.
Yeah. And I guess you can say, like, going back to what the villains were going for, because for those that don't know, these films take place in the 30s, and the first and the second film, and even the final film, there was the rise in Nazism, obviously, because it takes place around that part of the world. Especially like in the first film. The first film is actually like when it all started. Like it takes place in 1933. Hitler is now I guess you could say, the chancellor or the president of Germany, and like the start of the fascist party. And obviously, like, he wants this Ark of the Covenant because it could probably win the war. And the thing about at least these first, no, actually all the villains in these films, it shows you how much human wants power. You get what I mean? Especially when it comes
Mhm.
to like the first and the third film, where it's the power of God. And obviously those powers have consequences going, because in the Bible it says that man cannot withstand like the true power of God or the true image of God because of like, because we as humans, just how sensitive we as humans are. I mean, obviously you saw like what happened in the end of the movie, and even Indy tells Marion Crane, who's the first and continuous love interest in the series. I mean, when they saw that they were opening the Ark, he told her, "Hey, don't open your eyes because you don't know what can you take in." Like I said, that part of the film holds up today. I mean, if this was like modern day, would have like been like CG disintegration or something like that. Again, hard to believe this movie was rated PG, but again, the PG-13 system wasn't even rated or wasn't even there at the time. But I guess you could say this kind of makes Indiana Jones almost like a horror film because of that. But yeah, like Raiders is what started it all. Again, like every first film of a series, there's never real plans for a franchise or a trilogy. It was always sometimes intended to be a one and done. Or even if they have plans to see if they could do a sequel, they're like, hey, let's just wait till this movie, how this movie is in the box office. And if it makes enough money and people really love it, then we could continue on. I don't know if the Temple of Doom was a planned sequel or not, but hey, we got it still. So Temple of Doom is obviously the first film that we are introduced to, like everyone in the world is introduced to Ke Huy Quan, who we all know just became an Oscar winner not too long ago. It was obviously this film, and I think The Goonies, and I believe even a couple of years later Encino Man. And then he kind of just dropped off the face of the earth until the Daniels picked him up for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And look, he just became an Oscar winner for this. And I always think it's funny how, like, or not funny, I think it's really great how, like, Harrison Ford, who presented Best Picture that year, it was Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then you just see that small reunion between Harrison Ford and Ke Huy Quan. And even at the Golden Globes, where he said, like, the Steven Spielberg, who was nominated, or I think he actually won that year at the Golden Globes for The Fabelman. He said, Steven Spielberg, who gave me my first job, is here tonight. So again, like, it's just interesting how you see Short Round. That was Ke Huy Quan's character. Short Round from then to now. And then we got another character. Most fans will think of her as the insufferable one. I find her more of a funny comic relief. That's Willie Scott, a different love interest of Indiana Jones and also the now wife of Steven Spielberg. And when you watch this movie, you know, like, you'll think of her as insufferable because all she does in this film is scream at pretty much everything. And I can't blame her. But it's also like, it shows you of more of a fish out of water situation because she's not used to like the adventures and stuff. Same thing with like Marion Crane, but Marion Crane was semi sort of used to it. I remember you told me.
Yeah, her dad was essentially the same thing as Indy. I mean, he was looking for his own kind of treasures and artifacts, and so that rubbed off of her, even
Mhm.
though she had to take care of the tavern. So for her, even her character is a way to show a lot of progression for women, which again,
Yeah.
not going into woke territory or anything, but it's the idea that just not even addressing it, at least the actress, she pushed a lot of that for a lot of female viewers. And I mean, that's why a lot of female viewers who love this series know her best. They recognize her out of all the three or four, or actually five now. I'm saying out of the five femme fatales, that she's the recognizable one.
Yeah. And I think it's also because, like, again, Willie Scott was just the shelter one. She was just a lounge singer. She pretty much got dragged into it because in the beginning, like, Indy gets poisoned by this Chinese gangster. And then while she was looking for a diamond, he was looking for the antidote. And then things come to worse. He accidentally brings her along in the adventure, I guess you can say. And then, of course, we're introduced to Short Round, Ki Hui Kwan. And then they just go to India. And then the rest of the film it's a pretty great film. Not my favorite of the trilogy, of the original trilogy. Remember, this was all supposed to be a trilogy, by the way. There was no plans, obviously, for a fourth or fifth one. I don't know about if there were plans for a second or third one, but originally, yes, this was all a trilogy. But the second film really goes into horror territory because of the whole sacrifice. Because, like I said, the first and third movie of Indiana Jones goes into Judeo-Christian territory, while the second one goes into like the Hindu religion. These characters, they sacrifice, which gives you a lot of information of what true paganism really is, by the way, with these folks. But the second film, they sacrifice to, who is the god they sacrificed to in the second film?
Kali.
Kali, yeah. Because now I remember that famous line that Indy says on the bridge, "You'll see Kali in hell." Yeah, what was he saying, by the way, when like they're dangling off the piece of the bridge? All I know is you betrayed Shiva, and then he just mumbles stuff afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember most of that, but
yeah, it shows you like how paganism really works. People make all these sacrifices to the pagans, and then this one obviously just kind of verifies that a bit more. By the way, this movie gets referenced a lot more in the recent film. I know that because I just rewatched it again to prepare for this episode, but it does get referenced a lot. Like Indy is talking about, like, well, you didn't have to drink the blood of Kali or something like that, or having to be hypnotized. And I always think it's funny because, like, in the first film, there's like this like Arab guy who has a sword and he's just messing around with the sword, and he's like, I don't got time for this, and then just shoots him. And then the second time, it's these two guys, and he tries to do the same thing, but Indy lost his gun and he just runs away from them. Yeah. I was watching this video about like somebody comparing or talking about crocodilians because his specialty is he's a biologist who specializes in crocodilians. And he says like, well, like he knows how good of a movie Temple of Doom is. But the thing is that like, yes, there are crocodiles in India and there's a big old feeding frenzy in that film, but they're using American alligators in that film. And that's mostly because you know how difficult it would be to get like saltwater crocodiles. Saltwater crocodiles are like considered the number one most predatory animal on the planet. And thinking of trying to get that back in 1983 or 82, whichever. It's easier to train American alligators than it is to train.
I mean, they couldn't anyway, hence the name.
Yeah. Temple of Doom is a really great film. Yeah, not my favorite in the trilogy, but I'll still watch it from time to time. And actually, the interesting thing how I watched this, the first time I ever watched these films were from Spike TV back when Paramount Network was known as Spike TV. They were releasing them weirdly. They released them backwards. So I actually started off with The Last Crusade, and then it was Temple of Doom, and then Raiders of the Lost Ark. No matter what, I still saw Temple of Doom second because that's the perk of it being in the middle. That even if you start from the end or from the beginning, the second film is always the middle film. No matter how I watch it, the Temple of Doom was always going to be the second film I saw in the entire series. But there's a reason why I thought The Last Crusade was the first film. The first 20 minutes of The Last Crusade, it was like an intro to Indiana Jones, like when he was young, which had a River Phoenix playing a young Indiana Jones. And by the way, it shows you like how... so the thing about Indiana Jones, or really Indy in general, is that he's afraid of snakes. And then the opening of The Last Crusade, it shows why he's afraid of snakes. He was on this train, right? The young, like 12, 14-year-old Indiana Jones was on this train because he had like a crucifix or something that these archaeologists took. And he fell through this, like, I think he fell or something. And he landed in this like reptile room area on the train. And he landed into like this big old pit of snakes. And that's where it all started. Okay, so Harrison Ford has this chin scar. I don't know how he got the chin scar, by the way. But in the movie, the young Indy was learning how to use a whip and accidentally cut himself right here. And that's how they got the chin scar. It's a minor thing. It's not really like something people focus on too much. But I think because to capture like how indie is, how what indie became indie, or how Harrison Ford is, they just decided, you know what, let's just put a scene where like, or a small little snippet of how he got the chin scar from learning how to use a whip, not professionally. And then of course, like again, The Last Crusade, again, the first film I ever actually saw of Indiana Jones because Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was getting released in Spike TV. Again, back when Paramount Network was still Spike TV, was releasing all of these. And that was the first Indiana Jones film I saw. I already knew who Sean Connery was. My introduction to Sean Connery was a film called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I think his character was a meta character, if y'all want to know. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen had like the folks that Jesus and I talked about in the past, like the Invisible Man or Dracula. Tom Sawyer is in this film. Not the real Tom Sawyer, but like a fictionalized version of Tom Sawyer. It's an interesting film. Most people don't seem to like it. I tend to enjoy it. But that's how I knew of Sean Connery. And to my surprise, knowing he was the first ever James Bond, which is actually it's pretty interesting. And then not only that, Sean Connery is known as, was the first person magazine called him the sexiest man alive because he was a very good looking person back then. To my point, Last Crusade, definitely like one of my top twos of the entire series. And Sean Connery's so different in this film. Like he acts like you can see the character difference between Indiana Jones and Henry Jones, even though actually Henry Jones, okay, so we actually find out in this film that Indiana Jones is not his real name. His real name is actually Henry Jones Jr. And we know that because Sean Connery kept calling him Junior almost the entire time. And it's also funny because like Salah, who we didn't talk about when we were just talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark. By the way, guys, if y'all want to know, so Salah, he's an Egyptian character. He's played by John Rhys Davies. Most of us might know him as Gimli from The Lord of the Rings. But when Salah always hears Henry saying, or calling Indiana Jones Jr., when he hears Henry calling Indiana Jones Jr., Salah's like, well, what is this Junior you kept talking about? It's like, well, that's his name, Henry Jones Jr. And we find out the reason why, and I always think this is funny, the reason why Henry Jones Jr. calls himself Indiana Jones is because they had a dog, and you see the dog in the beginning of the movie. The dog's name was Indiana, and then it becomes a comedy thing where they're like, oh, he's named after the dog. But anyway, I mean,
God.
yeah. I just want to know, like, how did you get introduced to Indiana Jones? Because I talked about like how I was, but how did you get introduced to them?
Believe it or not, I got introduced to it through all the VHSs that we used to, like our family used to take us to the thrift shops or Goodwill, even before Goodwill was the thing. And a lot of these classics I grew up just by VHS. We didn't even have DVD players at the time. It was really new for us, at least my brother and I, and then our sister. We just lived off of VHSs. I mean, I got to see like how you saw The Last Crusade first in that order. That's how I saw the films, except for the second film. It didn't take me until about let's say 2000, like the early 2004 or somewhere on there, where I finally got to see the Temple of Doom on TV, which I believe would have been during the whole Spike TV thing when they were premiering the fourth film in theaters. So watching the third film first on VHS, and then later on watching the first film after that, yeah, it was pretty. I liked it. I mean, it was interesting. It really hooked me onto the whole, like, again, being raised in the church and stuff like that for Catholicism. I mean, it was the same idea essentially with understanding the whole Judeo-Christian views in these films. So it really clicked for me, and I really did enjoy seeing Indiana Jones. I mean, I kept saying, look, that's Han Solo, but like, it's Indiana Jones. It's just amazing to watch that. Even as a history buff, I mean, the fact that this is all happening during World War II, like, that was just awesome to see all that. So, I mean, everything about it was great. And I guess it just clicked. I mean, it stayed there with me, and it's been one of those things that has impacted my love for film and love for sci-fi. I mean, it's essentially science fiction. It's what it really is. People will argue it's historical fiction, etc. I mean, yeah, that makes more sense. As you know, as the films go further down, it starts to go more science fiction than
religious,
a historical accuracy or whatever. So it's awesome. I think I still have that poster when we went to go see the film in IMAX. I still have it there. I think I still have the ticket stubs too. I'm not really sure, but I mean, yeah, it's and they're just amazing. Like everything you said was essentially what I would have just put. Fantastic.
Yeah, damn. I had a point too, but I forgot. But anyway, other than Salah and Henry Jones, dang it, I always forget the character's name too. His colleague back at the university.
I'm trying to think. It's not. It's Marcus Brody.
Yes,
Yeah.
why that was familiar with obviously Brody, Jaws. Everybody knows Jaws, Steven Spielberg. It's kind of easy to make like a tie into there. But again, he's a very interesting character. Again, short round. I wish he came back for the last two films, but obviously around the time of the fourth film, Ke Huy Quan wasn't really acting anymore, and then I guess James Mangold or Disney or whoever decided didn't even think about getting Ke Huy Quan back for that, or unless he was still doing Everything Everywhere. I don't really know for sure. But anyway, that one, he had another his female love interest in the third film, Schneider. I think it's like the first like female villain of the entire series. She wasn't the main villain. The main villain was somebody who was obsessed with the Holy Grail. And how she dies is again something that teaches us as humans. She wanted the cup. Like she really wanted the cup. And then one of the knights, I think it was one of King Arthur's knights, said, "You cannot take the cup beyond a seal." And she foolishly does it anyway, which causes an earthquake. And a distance from a cup, the cup's hanging on by a cliff, and she's also hanging on by another cliff that's far apart from each other. She's saying, like, Indy, I can reach it. Because of how selfish she is, she lets go of Indiana Jones and falls to her death. It didn't take until Indiana Jones almost suffered the same fate, but his dad told him, "Don't let it go." To me, biblical reference right there. All you can say is like, so something one of my business associates says, like, we could cling on to sin. We could cling on to it. It's right there. We like grabbing onto it until God says, calls our names. He says, let it go. And then it's at that point, it's up for us to say, okay, I'm going to let it go. Again, Jesus and I, we do this thing sometimes where like, we could find like a religious meaning behind a lot of films. I mean, you saw how we did that with Interstellar. It's pretty common.
Interstellar.
Yeah. But anyway, again, it was always supposed to be a trilogy, or even if there wasn't plans for other two films, it was set to be a trilogy. And even before I ever saw The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, when Spike TV finally decided to release them in actual order, before I ever saw The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I was like 11, almost 12 years old at the time, I look at it and I'm thinking, like, does it really need to add another film now? Because the four characters, Andy, Henry Sr., Marcus, and Salah, they're all riding in the sunset. And that should be like the end of it all. And I guess you could say it's more, you could just call it more just the end of an era you could call this like the Nazi era, you can say, of Indiana Jones. Because it's first and the third film deal with him going up against Nazis. And then the second film, of course, deals with Indian deities and like Hindu religion and all that. Tying back to the second film, I've always found out from other people that like who are really young, who weren't alive, the second film was released. They were always told to never really watch a second film because of like the pagan themes or of its horror themes and stuff like that. Again, the second film is actually really, really good. It has a different tone than the first and the third film did. And something I've noticed is that the second film is the only film that actually has like this flashy title card versus like all the other films. It just gives you the title card like when we're getting introduced to what we're in for this movie. Really great film. Again, if you've never seen it, I just recommend just sticking with the original trilogy when Harrison Ford was young. Yeah, but if you want to watch the last two films, you have a right to. I'm not going to tell you not to. It's just that it's just like even now, like when I was binge watching the entire series before I decided to do this podcast, right after the third film, I was like, do I really need to watch the last two? Because it's like it should have been it. Like that should have been it. We don't have to see what Henry Jones Jr. is doing from then on. We could just say he gave up archaeology and decided to just be a teacher full time or something like that. But of course, during that time, there was the Adventures of Young Indiana Jones, which I've never seen before. I don't even know if it was a big hit or not. I think it only had like 2 seasons and then it got canceled. There was that. Of course, Disney had their attraction. Well, yeah, Disney. I think Universal also had an attraction. I'm not too sure. But there was a lot happening between...
I don't think they did.
You don't think they did? Yeah, so your feed is probably carrying on a little bit more.
No, I don't think Universal had rights to display Indian.
All right. But to our point, it was just supposed to be a trilogy. All right, we are back to the podcast. Well, this will be the last segment of the entire season. So, like I said, Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade was supposed to be its final film in general. It was supposed to be the end of a trilogy. Also, I think it was the first of, I think it was, no, scratch that. You've already reiterated about the series having its first PG-13 film. But anyway, to the point, it was supposed to be the end of the entire series because at this point, the actor who played Marcus Brody had died not too long after the first or the third film. And then Sean Connery, at this point, not long after this film, I think like in the early 2000s, had retired acting. Really, like there could not have been a reason for, Frank Marshall, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg to even want to do a fourth film. The plot that George Lucas came up was, and George Lucas, when it comes to like, okay, so how do I say this without like making George Lucas sound like a bad person? He's not. He's good at filmmaking. It's just when it comes to decisions about releasing, re-releasing, updating films, he tends to make very, very questionable choices. And I mean very questionable. Like I said,
I mean, Spielberg tried it one time.
yeah. Like I said, his idea. Okay, so let's just get to it, okay? Because I'm kind of stalling a bit. Like Jesus said earlier, it goes more science fiction rather than historical fiction and religious for these next two films. At least with this film, The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. George Lucas said, "What if we have aliens?" And Steven Spielberg was like, "I've done aliens already. I've done E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind." And supposedly, like, Steven Spielberg wants to do, or he's planning on doing another alien genre film coming out in 2026. So that's actually, I can't wait for that one. I wonder what it's going to be about, to be honest with you. But
Me too. That's
yeah.
very good.
Yeah. So, and because the thing though is that like when it comes to Steven Spielberg and alien films, the aliens aren't threats; they're friends. Especially with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where they just want to know, like, they're just seeing humanity. That's pretty much all they're doing. Or we want to show you like our ways. But and then E.T. is a whole different story, which is, one, it's a great film, and two, it's just about, finding a friend. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. First of all, that entire title is a lie because it's a skull. It's not made of crystal, as the film points out. It's made of like magnet. Okay, so how do I explain this? Aliens, they're not called aliens, by the way. They're called interdimensional. Well, I think George Lucas in an interview said,
no beings.
yeah, I think George Lucas said in an interview they're called extra dimensional, but I think that was just him saying interdimensional, and I just misheard it. But I swear I thought he said extra dimensional instead of saying extraterrestrial. That's just his way of saying a whole different thing from aliens. Do the movie, and Steven Spielberg was like, okay, and so this film brought back Marion Ravenwood, who we all said was the first love interest of Indiana Jones. And this had Shia LaBeouf come as another character. And Shia LaBeouf just came off his success of Transformers the previous year. And in this film, he's calling Mutt Williams, but we eventually find out that it's him and Indy's son when Marion and Indy were together before the events of the Temple of Doom. Apparently, they were supposed to get married, and Indy was saying, like, I just can't do it. He didn't know that she was pregnant at the time. And obviously, when fans found that out, it was kind of a mixed bag. Even 11-year-old, 12-year-old me who saw that, it was kind of a mixed bag. I was like, oh, okay, this doesn't really, like, change anything so far. You're just, like, putting in story. And then we get a character of Cate Blanchett, so far the only main female antagonist of the entire series. Like we said, Schneider in the third film was an antagonist. She just wasn't like the main villain. I forgot who the main villain was in the third film. But in the fourth film,
I think it's Donovan.
Donovan. Yes, Donovan. Thank you. Okay, one last thing before we actually continue on to the last two films. In the first film, the main villain, again, I forgot the name. If you could try to help me out on this one. Or not just the name, but also the actor.
Are you talking about Velo?
Belloc, yeah. Um,
The first, no.
yeah, Belloc. There's a scene where he's talking to Indiana Jones and a fly lands on his mouth, walks in his mouth.
Yeah.
And he still talks like he does, like literally during the cut. He's not like, fly in my mouth. No, he's like, he just continues to act. He probably didn't even know there was a fly landing on his mouth. You got to remember, they were actually filming in Cairo. I think they were still filming in Cairo. And I think at this point, most of the actors were already used to the environment from the first film. That's just, I know some people got sick from the first film because of the food and stuff like that. The only one who didn't get sick was Spielberg.
So if I could add something to that, I'm sure you obviously know this too, I believe. If it wasn't for that food poisoning, if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have gotten that iconic shot, or the iconic scene of Indy just using a gun, to bringing a gun to a sword fight. He had caught food poisoning just like most of the cast did, and Spielberg, I mean, Indy was like, I mean, well, Harrison Ford was just like, I'm not really like, I'm not up to it. They wasn't even going to be a gun. It was supposed to be his whip. And he was supposed to get all actiony and stuff like that. And I guess Harrison Ford was like, I'm not in the mood for it. So I guess he suggested, why don't you just use the gun? That's funny too. So as soon as that happens, I mean, that right there is like iconic. It's so dumb. It's so funny. So if it wasn't for the food poisoning, we wouldn't have that.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had nostalgia. But anyway, back to the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yes, again, we're introduced to a Russian villain because obviously this was the time of the Cold War, our war between the U.S. and Russia. And the character, Kate Blanchett's character, is a Soviet who's looking for power from from the aliens. Even though, again, they call them interdimensional, or even Lucas said extra dimensional. They're aliens. I'm not gonna say a fancy word. I'm just no way of saying it. They're aliens. Or originally, I think the original title was supposed to be called the Saucer Men from Mars, or something like that. But anyway, to the point, this film definitely does give a lot of heat, or it gets a lot of heat because most fans don't really like this film. I'm personally not a hardcore fan. I'm more of like a light-hearted fan of this series. But I don't really hate this film. I mean, yes, there's a lot of questionable choices like Shia LaBeouf swinging.
Same.
Yeah, Shia LaBeouf swinging from the vines with the monkeys. Yes, that's a questionable choice, and there's physics and stuff that don't make sense, like falling down 3 waterfalls and just not dying of or drowning from that. At this point, our suspension of disbelief has just gone way out the window. But it's an interesting film. It's just enjoyable. It's not like, again, it's not a classic like the original three. It's just more of like, you could watch it, you just kill almost 2 hours, and that's pretty much it. There are plenty of movies out there where it's like, it's not the best, but it's just like to have something on while you're like doing something like cleaning your house, or you just, again, want to kill 2 hours and just watch a film. That's pretty much what this movie is. And again, Shia LaBeouf is pretty good in this film. I guess at the end, I kind of started to buy him as Indy's father. And then you just see like the whole differences between, again, Indy's father, Indiana Jones himself, and now Mutt Williams. Like I said, Indiana Jones is always the adventure type. But then when you look at The Last Crusade, his father is a way complete opposite of that. And in fact, doesn't really resort to violence. Like, what is it? There's a scene in The Last Crusade where like there's a plane coming and Indy doesn't have any bullets. His father's idea was to get a bunch of he's doing the two. He's get a bunch of doves to get and what he does, he just like pushes in and out his umbrella, and then the doves just fly into the plane, and then the plane crashes. And then Mutt Williams just doesn't think at all. He just does stuff. That just tells you like how, I mean, if you think about how our lives were, if you ever grew up with like, grandparents or even like a tío or somebody. For those that don't know, tío means uncle in Spanish. You just see how like thoughts are different from generation to generation. Yeah, you could just tell like how different each of these people are. But again, it ends. There's again questionable choices. You can also tell that they start using CGI in this series because, like I said, the first three films are practical. I'll always stand by practical effects, no matter what, just because they seem more believable. Well, I wouldn't say more believable, but they're at
You
least
can't tell us like for example, you can't say Jaws in modern times is gonna look more believable as a 3D CG shark than the one that looks like a robot. Yes, it still looks fake, but it looks more realistic and practical than that. And especially with every single shark film that's come out in the past 10 years.
yeah. Again, I'll stand by it. The Thing, perfect example, by the way. The Thing, they use that like every effects in The Thing. For some reason, they're like, let's just not bother with it anymore. Are you serious? Oh, yes, I get it. The Thing back then, it wasn't a success as it was now. But even then, most scholars are like going back and realizing, man, this actually has some really, really great practical effects. And John Carpenter's just a legend. You can't really deny that part. Yeah. Sorry for going on a little rant there. But anyway, it pretty much just ends with Indy and Marion Ravenwood, or I think her new name in this was Marion Williams because she married after Indy broke up. It's just a little like backstory of like pretty much what happened to Marion after Raiders. And then in the next film, this was the last film, by the way, with Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. I think that's it. Yeah, it was just Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
Yeah. Wait, I'm trying to remember if David Kep wrote anything for him, but I don't think he did.
No, because Frank Marshall and John Williams, I think, are the only two creatives that came back. And obviously, Kathleen Kennedy took charge because Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy are married. And yeah, everyone hates Kathleen Kennedy now, by the way, because they didn't like Star Wars, what she did with Star Wars, and then they didn't like the route they were taking with this recent film with Indiana Jones, the Dial of Destiny. Which now I'll get to my thoughts. All right, look, again, it's just a regular popcorn film. You could just have it on the background. It's just I have more problems with the Dial of Destiny than I do with the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The Dial of Destiny deals with time travel, and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull deals with. I can get behind aliens in the Indiana Jones. Time travel, you're just gonna have to. You can't win me with time travel. Time travel is only good with certain films. The Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I can get behind aliens. Time travel, how they get to it is just like I can't back it up at this point. But I mean, yes, Harrison Ford, we get why they jumped to it. Harrison Ford, we all know, is 83, 82, almost 83 at this point in time. He's like legit. He's getting old, or he's old. They're just trying to use as much of Harrison Ford as they can. And then the fact that I found out that they were making an Indiana Jones 5 with an 80-year-old Harrison Ford, 81. Well, even then, it's hard to believe that's true because there's not much an 80-year-old can do, especially in an action film. Again, they just want to use Harrison Ford as much as they could. I mean, Disney already did it with, the Star Wars franchise, and Harrison Ford was like, "Yeah, just kill me off after this film. I don't want to continue Star Wars." But then they didn't kill him off for Indiana Jones. But again, for an 80-year-old Harrison Ford, he still kind of got it for this final film. I'll give you credit for that one. He still has the charisma of Indy. My issue is when I first started watching this film, and they had a really de-aged Indiana Jones. Guys, I'm going to let you guys know, de-aging, CGI de-aging, is my biggest pet peeve. I hate CGI de-aging. It's annoying. Like, I hate it so much. They started doing that with It Chapter 2 because they wanted to keep the kids looking like kids. And then Marvel decided to do this. They supposedly did this with Sam Jackson, but they were also doing this with they did this with Michael Douglas and a few other folks. But I'm like, guys, like, you cannot tell me that you're trying to make this passable to have this look like a really young Indiana Jones. And that it's not only that, it carries on for the first 20 minutes of the movie. That's where I started feeling down for this film. Okay, I get it. You can't have another actor play Indiana Jones.
In my opinion, yeah, the aging doesn't work. It's so unbelievable. You can tell it's all fake or whatever. But in my honest opinion, the first 20 minutes of this film felt like an Indiana Jones film. After those 20 minutes, it's like, okay, now I'm sitting here, I'm just gonna waste time, eat something and watch. Like, I'm not looking at my phone. Like, I watched this in theaters. So when I watched it, I was sitting here going, the first 20 minutes are awesome. Yeah, de-aging is whatever, it's just stupid. But the rest of the 20 minutes was really cool. After that, you get to the 80-year-old Indy chilling over here saying he wants to retire, get done with life and whatever. And I'm sitting here like, oh, so this explains why Spielberg dropped out.
Yeah, the only creators were John Williams because this was supposed to be his final outing with Indiana Jones. I don't know about final film in general because he says I'm going to retire like every year, and he just never does, which I hope he doesn't. But John Williams is a legend. Let's just get that out of the way. He's a legend. He's made great scores,
He's the
and
man.
he's the man. He's the one who's carrying great scores for like and Ludwig Göransson, who we've talked about multiple times on the podcast. Him, along with Ennio Morricone. If y'all don't know who Ennio Morricone is, he did the theme for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He also did the music for The Hateful Eight. Yeah,
The Thing.
The Thing. Yeah, we do definitely got to talk about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on this show because it's another classic. We've never really talked about an Eastwood film out, as far as I can tell, or really a Sergio Leone
I
film.
need you to basically at some point. Sorry, you've seen Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but you need to sit down and watch the other two because you are missing out. It's obviously it's like you've seen. I'm sorry, but you've seen the meme. You've seen
Yeah.
probably a meme where it has a horse that's crudely drawn, and then it goes from this is pretty good. It's like halfway in the middle, and then it's just fire. Like it's just amazing. This film, that trilogy is just nothing but the whole horse on fire. Like
Oh wow.
it's good.
Yeah.
Good and Bad and the Ugly is like the best, but like it's every the first two films obviously in my opinion are just amazing. It's like it's on there with Dark Knight, Back to the Future. It's just great. Anyway, ran over. Just going back to what you're saying.
Yeah. Anyway, to the point, again, John Williams and Frank Marshall are the only real creatives who came back. Harrison Ford again did this, and let's be honest, there's not going to be another one after this because this film bombed at the box office. It didn't make as much as Kathleen Kennedy wanted to, and not only that, what more can you bring an 82, almost 83-year-old Harrison Ford to do? Not much. I mean, you're not going to make a martial arts movie and have Chuck Norris, who's damn near 85. I think he's already 85 at this point to just do stuff. I mean, that's just how it is. Anyway, but I don't want to make y'all think I hate the film. It's just the aging for me. It's what ruins me. It just ruins it for me. But back to your point of the opening. Yes, the opening did feel like an Indiana Jones movie. I dig the opening. It's just that it's hard for me personally that the aging is just lingering over my head. Like I know there's so many stunt works, and like I said, I always say this: the stunt folks don't get as much credit as they should for all the action films that they have done. God knows how many years that they've created action films.
No,
They do not get as much credit. So I'll give credit for, well, I'm making it sound like I did the movie, but I'm saying like for as much stunt work they did for this opening, even if they had to put in a body double for Harrison Ford, do all this stuff, I'll give them credit for that. It's just like, again, the aging that it just lingers over me. And I'm not saying like it was all bad, like all the 20 minutes of the de-aging Harrison Ford was bad. There were moments where I saw it's like, dude, that actually does look like a legit younger Harrison Ford. There were moments where I was like, man, that actually looked like the moment they took the hood off of his head. I was like, wow, that actually looks really good. It's just certain moments later on, it's just like, okay, like it's too fake for me. Yeah, but the rest of this film it's pretty decent for me. It's just not one I would constantly go back to. I mean, I would see myself more watching Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls than this film. Shia LaBeouf isn't here in this film, and there's a whole lot of reasons why he's not in this film. Reason one is not a lot of fans liked the character of Mutt Williams. There's reason one. Reason two is just from people who've worked with him. Shia LaBeouf is insufferable to work with, but that's like past films that he's done. It's never been like a lot of recent films. Shia LaBeouf knows that he's messing up in life. He's openly admitted like I'm failing in life. I don't like I'm the biggest jerk on the planet. He said like I believe he converted to Christian Catholicism as his way of turning his life around. And like if y'all see some of the early like stuff right now, and he's saying stuff that most Christian Catholics wouldn't say. Well, he's like in his early, like he's what we call a baby Christian. He's trying. It's just gonna take a while for him to stop acting the way he is. So there's that. And then lastly, Shia LaBeouf has never had a good relationship with Disney because remember, before Indiana Jones was bought by Disney, they already did the fourth film. And obviously, like Shia LaBeouf did Even Stevens, which was the show he did on Disney Channel, and then he did Holes. And I don't know if he's ever done anything else with Disney, but he's never really had a good relationship with Disney, and that's one of the many reasons why he's not in this film. But I will say, story-wise, we all know how bad the Vietnam War was. I mean, my grandfather fought in it. I know many people whose like relatives fought in the war. And then you know the stories, especially around this time, because this takes place in, I believe, in 69. Yeah, it takes place around 1969 when the NASA landed the first man on the moon. Take it as you leave it, if it happened or not. I don't care. This probably should not even be an argument in the first place. If you believe they landed on the moon, they landed on the moon. If you don't, then whatever, okay? I just hate this argument so much. It grinds my gears. I declare that this is no longer an argument, all right? So just leave it at that. That's just my other pet peeve, by the way. To my point, around this time of the war, especially like late 60s, early 70s, the chances of survival were like zero. Like you just hope that you come out of this alive. So that's like the story I get, like how so many parents must have lost kids through the war. And because of that, especially like like a lot of married couples separate due to the loss of a kid, especially if it was their only kid. I'm not saying it's like that all the time. I'm saying it is a common occurrence. And it's because like they don't want to talk. Like it's hard to talk about that. You know, you just lost a son in the war, in a war that at this point we weren't even winning. Anyway, to the point, he's pretty much dragged into this final adventure of, well, yeah, he's pretty much just dragged into the final adventure by his goddaughter, Helena. I forgot her last name, but she's played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's a really great actress, or pretty good actress. I've only known her for two things, which is Fleabag, which is a show she did on Amazon. It's a comedy show. It deals with like grief and moving on in a different way. I recommend y'all check that out. And oh yeah, sorry, I almost forgot about him. The character of the villain, played by Mads Mikkelsen, was a pretty good villain. I'm not gonna lie. It's just that like it's not the villain in this film is not as memorable as like all the other villains. And it's hard because again, Mads Mikkelsen is such a great actor, by the way. If you've seen him in like The Hunt and the early James Bond films, and then Another Round, he's a really, really good villain, or not a good villain, but a good actor. He plays really good villains. But the thing though is that like it's really just like the first opener was mixed for me. I didn't say it was entire negative. It was just really I know I keep crapping about it, but the deep fake de-aging stuff. But the ending where it all went, it just completely went downhill for me because it was the time travel and the fact that Archimedes, who built this dial of destiny, only set it to where you could only go back to the War of Syracuse and to, I believe it was 212 BC. It's just kind of anticlimactic, like how the villain goes out. But anyway, again, I'm not going to always point out negatives and stuff. There's some positives. I mean, like, even though I'm not a huge fan of when they go back to Syracuse during the Battle of Syracuse, I mean, the effects and the design of how this all went down, it was actually really good. It's just, it was a mixed bag for me. And then obviously Disney, Andy's like, you know what? I'm not going home. I want to stay here. And Helena's like, well, that's not happening. And she like just punches him in the face and just takes him back in time, back to their time, only for them. All that was to just reunite Andy. And the only good thing I like about that is that they did that. They kind of recreated that scene where, like Andy just got beat up. He was dragged by a truck. And Marion's like, well, where doesn't it hurt? And he's like, here. And then she kisses
Here.
like the elbow. Yeah. She kisses the elbow. And then he's like, here. And then she kisses the forehead. And, Eeyore goes from there. They did the exact same thing. But this time it was, of course, it was an emotional hurt. But this time it's Marion saying, well, it hurts here. And then here. But yeah. And of course, Sala comes back. Can't forget about Sala. John Rice Davies playing Sala again. I love that line that he says, where he's like, I miss the desert. I miss the sea. I miss you playing Gimli, John Rice Davies. That's what I miss. I miss that. And I wish he went on the adventure, but Indy says, like, no, this is something I have to do on my own because, like, if you look at it, Sala has a better life than Andy does. Because remember, Andy just lost his son. He's separated from his wife. His wife, because I don't think they were really divorced. And he's dragged into an adventure that he's too damn old to do. And Sala's now an immigrant, just living the good life for his grandkids. And he's like, he even says, like, I'm teaching my grandkids how to live as both American and understanding their Egyptian history. John Rice Davis was supposed to come to San Antonio a year ago, but had to drop out because I think he had a dying friend that he wanted to stand by, which I give all respect to the guy. I mean, I would have done the exact same thing. But I mean, that's pretty much it. But like, before we go, just what were your thoughts on the last two films?
When you watch the fifth film, it obviously, for me, gives me more precedence to watch the fourth film. I feel like the fourth film has gotten so much. I mean, everyone says it already. The fourth film's gotten so much criticism and stuff. And when you watch that over this one, you're sitting there going, well, I would pick the previous over the new one for obvious reasons. I was like you. I didn't have, like, when that film came out, I didn't have any hate. I liked it. I was like, dude, I can't wait to see another Indiana Jones film. Like, that's amazing. I didn't think, I would not have thought this would ever be made. I just thought it was a long time ago that it was going to stay in the past. And when it came out, as we were just growing up in school, it was like, dang, that's amazing. It sucks I never got to see it in film at the time, because even then, living was always hard to come by, and you couldn't save so much money to go watch a film in theaters unless the whole family went. So I had to wait. I think I remember this. At school, we were giving out Secret Santa gifts. He got a DVD of the Crystal Skull, and he didn't want it. So I think he gave it to me because I just said, "Yo, if you don't want it, I'll take it." So I don't know if I still have that DVD, but like that's how I got to see it when I got home, and it was great. I liked it. Sure, as time goes on, I obviously can see the criticism for it, and I agree with everything you pointed out. It's really just, I mean, kind of stinks as to where it ended up, but it is what it is. It's film. This new one, I mean, I watched it at 10 o'clock, and I remember it very well because my brother and I watched it at 10, and I think only 2 other people were in that showing. So, I mean, it didn't do the numbers that Disney wanted it to, but that's what you get when you don't have the same star power from the original films. Market this film. I mean, the only thing Disney had going for was, besides Harrison and John Williams and Frank Marshall. But again, the landscape of the internet was like, oh, Frank Marshall's married to the person that ruined Star Wars, so that's not doing any favors. And they just had Logan, the director. We just had James Mangold, and that was the only thing that was really marketing the film. But it didn't attract anybody. So I thought it was boring when I first watched it, except for the 20 minutes. So the first 20 minutes, I was like, this is awesome. After that, it's boring. And then, I don't know, I guess I had to watch it again, because the second time I watched it was with my dad, and my dad got to see it. So he doesn't remember the fourth film. I could have sworn he saw it when it was on TV, because I remember him one time trying to watch something on TV, and it was the Crystal Skull on like USA Network or something. And he didn't remember about Williams. He didn't remember Shia LaBeouf. But he was sitting there and he had a good time. He laughed, especially the one scene where they're being chased in Morocco. I think that's what it was, when Helena and her short round were basically on a chase in the little cart things, and he laughed about it. He was funny. It was funny for him, and so watching it with him, it was kind of different. He was invested on it. I became invested in it again, and I was like, it's not that bad. Working with an initial script that he didn't like, made it. Apparently, it got leaked, A lot of people. I don't know if you remember the times I showed you. I would upload videos to you and share with you saying the leaks were like pretty bad, and I was sitting here going, "This is gonna be the worst thing. Star Wars is ruined. This was the film to ruin Indiana Jones." And I think I don't know whatever rumor was true or not, whatever leak was true or not. It must have scared Bob Iger to say, "You know what? We need to reshoot everything. We need to reshoot the whole ending." Because from what I heard, the leaks were going to be far worse. At least the ending was going to be far worse. So I'm glad, or whatever was true or not, we got the product at the end result, and I liked it. At least second time around. So it's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world, but yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing. We don't have a lot of time to talk about more, but I wish I could. But anyway, this is the final episode of the season. This is actually your first time on on a season finale, actually. Thank you for coming out to do this episode. Again, man of my word, we finally did it. After almost 2 years in the making, we finally got to do this episode. But that's about it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you guys for another great season. Can't wait for season 4. Probably late August, early September. Just depends on what I can do. I do have a bonus episode coming out in the summer, so be prepared for that one. Otherwise, you guys have a great night, day, morning, whenever you're listening to this. And just to end this off. Dun 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 dun. Oh man. Thank you guys so much. All right, bye everyone.